Hi, this is David Smith from Film, Video and Virtual Reality Online Magazine, formerly Australian Video Camera Magazine. Today I'd like to share with you some of the excellent new features of Vasco da Gama version 12 HD Ultimate from Motion Studios. Well, my wife and I recently took a 2-week trip to New Zealand, and I'm going to use that trip to show you some of the new features in Vasco da Gama 12. Wonderful new features have been added this time, as always happens with Motion Studios. Each new release includes very carefully thought out and significant advances over the previous version, and this one's no exception. Obviously, you have two ways to operate Vasco da Gama, as in the past few generations, and these are the Quick and Easy Assist mode, which has now been spiced up a little more, making it even easier to set up your basic travel map. And then, of course, if you want to go into the fancier features, you just use the expert mode and you can control every most minute detail to your heart's content. I've chosen to do this project in expert mode because I just want to go in and zoom in on some of the new features, one of which is clouds. And this new version includes 3 different types of clouds: light clouds, heavy clouds, and stormy clouds. And they all animate slowly and move in directions that you can control very easily. A great new feature is the new map style called Blue Marble 2018. And I really like this one. It's got a rich, deep blue colour and really nice colour gradations. And I'll use this one for this project. There's full support for GPS data in the simple map mode as well as advanced map mode, and that makes it easier to drop in maps that you've produced in, say, Vasco Street Maps, or in fact any other maps you've got that contain geodata. There's a new camera mode called Drones Camera Mode, which tracks every move you make as though you have a drone flying behind your car or behind your motorbike or whatever it might be. You also have much better control over still pictures that you want to add, and these always look crisp and sharp and can be pointed towards the camera automatically so that you can always see all of the detail in your slides. National borders, water and land, can now be switched on separately, so you can actually have national borders that are only on land or on land and water, and that's a big achievement. That's good. There's another 4 levels now of quiet movements. The calm motion function calms down the movements of your object. If it's a plane, for example, it doesn't bounce around as much as it might if you're doing a series of tight turns. And there are now 4 levels of calm motion, which is great. And there are smoother camera movements. You can use the calm motion function in association with the automatic camera modes. And this calm motion, which is now available for automatic camera modes, means with just one click you can take out the choppiness that would normally happen if you had a series of camera movements, and you can smooth it out and make it much more fluid and appealing. Well, here's my basic trip that I've laid out. I've simply gone in and laid out each of the waypoints that we stopped at on our trip and changed to a vehicle that's approximately the same as the ones we actually used in real life. So I'll go through and replay this. So here's our aircraft taking off from Melbourne. Don't worry about the size or anything like that. I've just simply dropped in the waypoints, and the aircraft's going to fly first into Wellington, and then it'll change instantly to an ATR 72 twin-engine prop jet aircraft to fly down to Christchurch. And I haven't done anything other than drop in the waypoints. There's no fine detail at all. Here's the train going across the Transalpine Railway to Greymouth. Then we're going along the coast to Westport. And then we're going up to Nelson, across to Picton, and then we're going down to Blenheim to see the Car Museum and the Aircraft Museum there. Then down to Kaikoura to see the beach, and possibly some seals, then up into the mountains, and finally we'll go driving down to Christchurch again, transform into our 737, and back we go to Melbourne. So I'll stop that replay there. That's the basic layout, which I'm going to refine now and show you how I do that. The first thing I want to change is the map style, which is going to go to Blue Marble 2018, and you'll see how striking this look is. There we are, nice rich deep blue and much prettier palette of colours for the land areas. You can see also some snow on the mountains down the middle of South Island of New Zealand here. The other thing I'm going to do is to go into optical effects, and I'm going to go to settings for clouds, and I'm going to choose from the three. There's lightly cloudy, heavy or stormy. I'll choose heavy clouds because they suit the weather that we actually encountered. And I'm setting the wind speed to about 5. I'll put that on a setting of 5, which gives me the clouds moving in a nice gentle fashion, not too fast to look unrealistic. Here's a preview with the Blue Marble 2018 and the clouds moving very slowly across, and this gives a very nice view of the whole thing. Having done that, I'm going to move in very close to the map and make some very subtle adjustments to the actual route by adding a series of extra points to follow as we take the train across the Alps, and then as the little car drives up through the very windy, typically windy New Zealand roads. Okay, now I've zoomed in on Wellington so we can make a few fairly important adjustments to the whole system. First thing I'll do is turn off the object, and I'll turn off the text as well to make it easier to see where my actual point is. Now the marker, the pointer here is on Wellington City itself, but I want us to land at the airport, which is in this little place here. And I also want the aircraft to come in the correct direction, which is to fly along here and come around and fly up towards the north along the airstrip, which lies just in here. So I'm going to change the pattern here and bring it up like so. And I'll make this one an angular one. The other thing I'll do is to look at the fade properties of objects. So we're on the objects here, and I'm going to go down here to fade. I'm going to do a fade in effect, a smooth fade, and it's going to be for 1 second, and a fade out for 1 second. And I'll do that, in fact, for all of the transitions where the object that changes from being an aircraft to a car or another kind of plane. So I'll just go away and do some work on that now, and then I'll come back and we'll do the rest of the adjustments that I want to make. Now the next set of changes I want to make are to the font size for our city labels. They're obviously too big here, so I'm going to go up to my texts, and here's the object texts, and the size is going to be adjusted here. So I bring them down. Now you'll notice that the text is disappearing into the car here. I don't want that. I want to have the heading clear of the car. So I'm going to go down here to position and altitude, and I'm going to raise the altitude of this one until it's clear. Now the text is clear of the car. So by going up to, I'll make that a clear 13%. And I'll go through and do the same I'll go to the next one, up to Westport, and we'll do the same thing there and raise it up to 13, 12, 13. There we go. One thing I'd love to have in Vasco da Gama is the ability to double click on these numbers here and then be able to type in the number that I want. That would be a really good time saver. Hasn't been done yet, but I think that may be something that'll come up in one of the later versions. So I'll go through and adjust all the texts so they're above and clear of the object driving through. The other thing I want to do is to go into the actual path of the car, which clearly isn't going to drive across the ocean here, across the Tasman Sea. It's going to drive up through the mountains. I'll turn the texts off for the minute so we can see more clearly. And what I'll do is simply go back to the route version and click on this and just bring the car in onto the land. I'll make this point a sharp angular point, and the train is way too big, but I'll fix that later. So here we go. Our car's now going to drive along here at the base of the mountains, a few twisty bits, and then we'll come down to the coast here at Westport. So I'll go through the whole route and add more detail like this, making the route follow more closely the actual highway that we drove on, and that will make quite a big difference to how the whole thing works. I'll make those changes throughout the route, and then we'll come back and play the new version, still without having changed camera angles. We're simply playing with the actual route and the details of the route at this stage, but we'll see how it looks. Let's play it through now and see how we look at this stage. There's our aircraft taking off, flying across the Tasman Sea. Clouds are moving very slowly as we now come in, and we'll do a little bank around to Wellington because I've actually turned flight mode on, which is great. And then the plane changes to an ATR, takes off, comes down and lands at Christchurch. The train is probably way too big, but that's okay, we'll change that. It goes across the Alps, and then we drive up. See how the clouds are moving slowly across? We drive up the coast to Westport, and so on, till we finish our trip. Now, clearly there are a number of adjustments to make. I'll do those, and then we'll come back and see how it works. Okay, well, you can see now, in this closer view of the top end of the South Island of New Zealand, the enormous number of changes that I've made to smooth out the track, and I don't want that point. Right click and get rid of that. So you can see the detail that's coming in now. I'm going in quite close, and you can see I've made a huge number of points to more correctly mimic the actual route that we drove in the car particularly, and also made some adjustments to the aircraft because they you can see here our first aircraft came in, we landed pointing roughly north at Wellington, took off in the same direction, having changed planes a few days later to fly north again and then bank around and come down across the coast to wind up down at Christchurch. So a huge number of changes I've made here, and let's do a fly through now and see what's happened. I've added a new flight angle, which is at a 30-degree slant, and that's rather nice. We can see our plane coming across through some clouds, right across the Tasman Sea, leaving a little vapour trail as we fly, coming down and flying nicely down into Wellington, pointing north, and then the ATR 72 takes off and flies down to Christchurch. We switch to the train, and we pick up the train across to Greymouth, and we then go right through. I must put some fades on those before we finish. Here's the little car driving up to Nelson. Beautiful place, Nelson. And then down to Picton and Blenheim. Right down the coast to Kaikoura, along the newly rebuilt coast road, which is almost finished, massively rebuilt after earlier earthquakes, making it a fairly slow trip at the moment. And then back to Christchurch. And finally we take off and fly back home to Melbourne. So I haven't gone through and edited all the camera angles, but I'm going to do that in the next stage. But at the moment we've got a fairly nice video as it is, and if we were to want to export that, we'd simply go up to Export, and we would choose AVI Direct Show, because that gives us the best quality, and we would choose OK. We would call it, we'd navigate to the project, which is in Ozcam magazine, right down the end to Vasco da Gama 12 Ultimate Review. Type in a name and we'll call it VDG 12 Review Video 01. And it's a video we're saving. We'll choose the format, which will be from this huge list of possibilities. I just want full frames uncompressed because they work best in my video editing software, which is Vegas Pro, of course. So now we'll just render this video out, and that'll take some time. So after a few minutes, we've got now a complete video record of the entire journey, coming up to 99%, and that'll be a large AVI file, uncompressed and perfectly suited for importing into Vegas Pro, or in fact any nonlinear editor that you prefer. So here's our completed journey as we take off from Melbourne and wing our way eastwards across the Tasman Sea. In just over 3 hours, we'll leave the wide brown land of Australia behind and enter a new world of lush forests, steep and rugged mountain passes, and the evidence of the 20,000 earthquakes that rattle New Zealand each year. In Wellington, which boasts one of the shortest international runways on Earth, we visited the wonderful Te Papa Tongarewa Museum. Featured is the stunning Gallipoli exhibition, developed by the internationally renowned Weta Studios, with its 9,000 graphics and modelling wizards based near the Wellington Airport. The genius of Kiwi Sir Peter Jackson is clearly evident in these twice life-size ultra-realistic human figures dedicated to the New Zealand troops who fought and died at Gallipoli. It is a deeply moving experience and a highlight of our trip. From Wellington we flew south to Christchurch, a city devastated by past earthquakes, and just before we arrived, the shooting massacre of 50 people as they worshipped in 2 mosques. The famous cathedral remains exactly as it was during the deadly earthquake of 2011, which killed 185 people and caused widespread damage to people and property, which persists to the present day. There are plans to rebuild it using earthquake-proof foundations similar to those used beneath the Te Papa Museum. From Christchurch, we took the Transalpine Railway across the Central Alps to Greymouth on the west coast. It's a beautiful experience in the well-appointed train. The journey took us through 16 tunnels, including one that is 12 kilometres long and takes 20 minutes to get through. Once on the west coast, we drove north to Westport, where we were amazed at the rugged coastline, rich in subtropical vegetation and featuring a large colony of seals. The adults frolicked in the protected bay, and this little seal wanted to join them, but kept getting washed back by the surf. A plucky little creature, it persevered and eventually made it through to calmer water. Driving north to the deep-water port of Nelson, we took a wonderful cruise along the row of beaches that line the Abel Tasman Peninsula. The beaches all have inviting golden sand, and we took a walk between 2 of them through lush forest with steep paths and splendid isolation. Numerous kayakers explored the national park, getting a close-up view of seals, seabirds, and occasionally whales and dolphins. It really is a remarkably secluded and beautiful ocean park. All too soon it was back to Christchurch, then all aboard our 737 for the short flight home. Some of our best memories being brought to life by Vasco da Gama software from Motion Studios.